Good afternoon, everyone. How's everybody out there in startup land? It's Thursday evening, and we're ready to rock and roll. We hopefully will have Jonathan uh, from G Beta on tonight to kind of give us some uh, ideas about what they have going on in their program. He says he's here, so Jonathan, if you try to get backstage, we can you can introduce yourself again, and we can get the ball rolling, and then we get on with the rest of our program. Yeah, we had some issues during the networking period where things were not working properly at all. That was the first time I ever experienced that. So that's so that was pretty interesting. And so, Lloyd Jr., I'm not sure what you're saying. So, but if you want to come on and kind of see what's what. Yes, but hopefully we can get through this and go from there. Yeah. So what are you saying?
No, I was messaging Jonathan in the background, but
okay. All right. That's your messaging me.
No. Welcome everyone to Startup on the Blocks, our second edition for 2021. While Jonathan gets on stage with us, I just wanted to extend my personal welcome. Regardless of what kind of technical difficulties we have in the background, we still have a lot of great information for you and your startup idea. So I will leave it to my father, and I'll get Jonathan on the line for you.
All right, sounds good. I appreciate that, Jonathan. Let us know if you're having some issues getting back stage. While we're waiting on Jonathan, if you looked at, we had a poll out there. So if you to make sure you participate in the poll, so we can actually collect that data from everybody. Looks like a few folks have been participating. So today's program, we're going to talk about how to apply for these competitions a little bit more, because the email I sent out to everyone today, it had a bunch of links in there for funding opportunities. So I thought it would be good for everyone if you actually could understand. Yeah. So Jonathan is having a little trouble getting backstage there. So Jonathan, if you would just maybe try to refresh, and I'll keep an eye out to see doing the. Oh, here you go. All righty, there you go. Yeah. So we'll see what challenges. Jonathan, this has been a rough night for hopping, and I've never seen it act up like this before.
Well, I clicked over live to the stage button, asking to join. It didn't give it back to me, so I had to completely close it back and come back in through the link. But thanks for being patient with me.
No, that's no problem, and we're excited to have you here. And kind of you're in this thick of things with all these G Beta programs and all these other programs that Generator has. And I noticed that even Generator has some programs for people of color. So I thought that was pretty interesting as well. So I'll let you introduce yourself again, and welcome back. And so just introduce yourself again, please.
Absolutely. So I'm Jonathan Kretz, and I'm the director of the G Beta Bantucola program, which, as Lloyd mentioned, is part of Generator. And Lloyd, do you want me to keep it maybe about 5 minutes or so? Or
I want you to be thorough from the point that, maybe tell a little bit about what you all's experience with the first cohort, and what are y'all going to be doing with the second cohort, and some of those links that you sent me, that stuff you all got coming up that might be of interest to folks.
Absolutely. So we did complete our first cohort last fall, and it was a G Beta program, where 7-week cohort where we brought in 5 companies and supported those companies to really sharpen the saw when it came to learning or growing their knowledge about venture capital or angel investment. It wasn't the equity-based style accelerator where people work 40 hours a week for anywhere from 9 to 12 weeks. It was a little bit more of a toned down version of that, where it's probably a 4 to 6 hour a week commitment, where there's intros to mentors like Lloyd. And there's at the end, the 7th week is the culmination of everything of developing the company's executive summaries and their pitch decks. This time around, we introduced the founders that joined the G-Beta cohort to 31 different either individual investors, but predominantly it was investor groups. There were about 25 investor groups that we made investment intros to. And then there were also a handful of next level accelerators that I mentioned that are equity based, where they give money for you to join the program. They ask for a small amount of equity in your business, but the intention there is that they become partners with you in your business to scale your business through revenue growth. And then the big next step is to fill out whether it be your seed round of investment, or if you're next level and you're going for like Series A rounds of funds. Generator, that's really the kind of starting point where Generator started, was an equity-based accelerator. The G-Beta came out because community sponsors said we need to bring programs like this that get our founders that are in our communities ready for these bigger equity-based accelerators. And so the Stewart Community Institute and the Spring Entrepreneur Hub were the main funders for the first 2 rounds. We just announced we're also going to do a G Alpha in summer. And G Alpha, if you think of just the alpha beta, right? The alpha is for conceptual companies that might be in very early stage. So we'll work closely with UWF and Pensacola State College and anyone who has like a really cool idea, and then take them to another type of accelerator program where it's like really understanding kind of like what it takes to get an idea to the next level and turn it into a company. And then it graduates almost into a G Beta. And then, as Lloyd said, we have just an exciting opportunity at Generator of growth. And 2020 was a phenomenal year for the program. They introduced 10 new G Betas, Pensacola being one of those. So we had the companies that came through the program. Several of them are in continued meetings with the investors that they've met, which is really exciting. Most of them are experiencing month-over-month revenue growth, which is also exciting. And we were just glad to be a part of those companies and their growth. And then kind of the next level for a couple of our companies is they're applying to these equity-based accelerators. For Generator, they have their flagship, which is it's vertical agnostic. So any market that a company may be in that has some scalable potential and high market growth potential, those are companies that the Generator flagship takes in. This year, they're doing all early accelerators virtually. So even though it's in the Midwest, they're able to attract companies from across the country more easily because they're not asking them to come to Madison. Another first of its kind for Generator accelerator, Northwestern Mutual committed $200 million to support Black founders. And of that money, they allocated some funds to Generator, where they said that while this $200 million isn't going in one pot, it's being spread out across the country. They did allocate some funds to say, we want to find some very exciting companies that can scale and can scale quickly through the Generator model. So that's where we stood up with Northwestern Mutual, the Northwestern Mutual Black Founder Accelerator, where we're going to use that to support Northwestern Mutual's goals with what they want for the program. And then the hope is that we get to really shine a spotlight on some companies, get them into large investments, because through the history of Generator, there's been 101 alumni that have graduated the Generator programs. That's the equity-based version. and they've raised over 400 million in capital. 90% of the companies that have graduated from the generator equity brands have received investment of greater than $250,000 within less than a year out of the program, and 59% of the graduates have received, or the alumni have received over $1 million within less than a year of graduating the program. And that all comes from investor pitches of greater than 80 or more that happen at the end of a 12-week rigorous cohort program. So I'm excited to be a part of essentially all of that, because I'll start from the beginning where I'll do a G Alpha in summer. This spring, we are taking applications for our G Beta. We'll do 2 G Betas this year in Pensacola, and that is the plan. So we have one scheduled for spring. That one would start early April. Applications will be open until early March. And then the fall window will probably fall somewhere in kind of the September, October timeframe for start date there, really with the intention of supporting local businesses to help with companies that have real potential for supporting the economic development growth of the area and job growth in the area. So, Lloyd, I hope that was encompassing enough. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
I received an email within the last couple of days that you may have not noticed this yet. The generator also has a lightning round with investors for Black and Brown founders, and I put that link in the stage chat. And so that will be where you have one-on-one with the investors, and it's just for Black and Brown founders. So that's a pretty good deal as well. So
absolutely,
yeah. So go ahead.
I was just going to echo. We ran lightning rounds holistically, where we reached out to everyone: Y Combinators, the Techstars, all of these. We like to collaborate with everyone, and so we brought in. I think it was greater than 80 accelerator programs to lightning rounds. Mm-hmm. The feedback we got was we want to do another lightning round, but we want to support Black and Brown founders. Okay. So that was where this came from. It came from these accelerator programs really trying to ramp it up.
Yes. And so like from my standpoint down here in Pensacola, so I'm not sure what all plans Generator has for that money for Black and Brown founders, but it would be nice too if you could twist their arms and talk them into doing something down here for Northwest Florida.
Fair enough. I'll say this: the accelerator program specifically,
yes,
it will. We're attracting even accelerators that aren't specifically generator relations. So I'll say that. But yes, I've already hit them up to say, how can we make sure to sponsor startups on the blocks? I'll tell you that much.
So, fantastic. I appreciate that. And so like, so here in Northwest Florida, I think we're missing out on a lot of that money that's been set aside out there for Black and Brown founders. And my guess is, with all the press releases I've seen, it's probably over $2 billion now. So it's pretty amazing. So, and we're trying to get our startups here, trying to recruit more startups here, start more startups, so we can maybe take advantage of some of that funding. And I appreciate you putting the plug in for us. And and I'll share some more stuff with you later about our programs. And I see there might be a question before you get off here.
Oh, yeah.
So, so what is the commitment to diverse founders after my phone, after the money is not designated for diversity? So what is the commitment to the diverse founders after the money is not designated to diversity and inclusion? So I think it's like, so once these dollars are gone, I guess she's wondering what is going to be the ongoing commitment. You think?
So when it comes to the accelerators that actually invest in the companies and then equity, I would say. That would be the, okay. I mean, if you think about it, these accelerator programs are infusing money into the companies.
Yes.
Only because their success will be the success of the accelerator program investing, right?
Yeah.
These lightning rounds, we deselect any accelerator that is charging a fee to the founder.
Wow. Okay.
No generator program that I'm aware of. Which there's so many, so I'll just say that with a caveat. We don't charge a fee for any of our programs. GBeta specifically, the no equity dilution and no fee, and it's all because it's sponsor driven.
Yes,
the sponsor takes care of all that cost.
Yes. I got you. So I definitely get that. I think the money that's set aside now is a good start, and what normally happens if some of our folks are successful here, when they're successful, they can come back and support, programs, to keep just keep reinvesting in the community. But we definitely appreciate, what you're doing and looking out. You're looking out for us.
Yeah, and I want to say, like, the last point that kind of is a tie into that point. When I started researching kind of the landscape of who's investing in the Northwest Florida area, you didn't find a lot of funds investing in kind of high growth companies. There's a lot of investment in real estate and things of that nature, but there is kind of a gap that I hope, in collaboration, we start looking at how do we, turn some of the high wealth mindset into looking at small business growth, right? As a positive way to infuse positive growth within communities. Because if you look at the 31 investor pitches that each of the companies got to do, it was basically shining a spotlight in Atlanta, in Miami, in Naples, in all these areas where these investment groups embraced small business entrepreneurship, technology development, things of these nature as a way to grow your community. So I think when that spotlight is shown to other areas, it starts doing what you said, Lloyd, which starts bringing people here because they go, oh, wow, there's some really good things happening in Pensacola and Northwest Florida. Yes. But that's my last thought there.
Yeah, and so what I've seen for my startup, the emails I've been getting, a lot of those are the ones that are supporting Black and Brown founders. They're actually grants; they're not equity based.
Oh.
Yeah, so there is money out there, and so that's why we're going to initiate our first pilot cohort, starting into this month. So the folks that got in the final rounds of the pitch competition, we're inviting all of them to get started in our program at the end of the month. So I'll reach out to you about that.
Yeah.
And know what we got going on.
Yeah, I'd like to be a part of that.
Yeah. All right. It sounds good. Appreciate it.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks. All right. Bye-bye.
Right now.
All righty. So, so the basic news is that there are a lot of funding opportunities out there, and some of them are, I haven't ever participated in, but I think what I'm seeing is the grant-based one. So just keep your eyes open. I posted some links in the stage chat here, so you can definitely take a look at some of those. What I want to do is when you apply for these things, communicating what your startup is doing. This video that I'm getting ready to show you, it's going to teach you some of the best practices of how to answer the questions. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and start the video. If I can figure out where it is here. Let's see what we got here. Okay, found it. All righty. So I'm going to go ahead and start it here.
Hi there. How's it going? All right. Okay, what we're going to talk about today is how to apply and succeed at YC. In my capacity as the head of admissions, I go around the world and I give talks and I meet folks that are applying and I answer lots of questions. And so I think I have a decent internal model of the kinds of questions that people have and the kinds of things that people get hung up on. And so I'm going to do my best to anticipate what you're probably thinking about and try to answer those to the best of my ability. All right. So why is it even worth applying to YC? People ask this question a fair amount of time. And I would argue that the very act of completing the application forces you to think about stuff that you should definitely think about. For instance, what are we building? What is different about what we're doing than other options on the market? Who are your competitors? That's a good one to ask. Here's one that sometimes people don't talk about before filling out the application. What is your equity split? You'd be surprised. People often have never had that conversation. And so the very act of going through and doing an application and working with your co-founder to answer all of these things, I would argue is an extremely good idea. And regardless of whether you do IC again, you should ask yourselves all of these questions. And if you find a bunch of murkiness where you can't answer them, that's usually a sign that you should be discussing this more. And so right off the bat, I recommend going and answering the questions. I think it's a good idea. Another thing is, if you are watching this very presentation, there is a good chance that YC is a great fit for you, right? There's lots of people that apply and they don't really know what YC is, and they Googled like how to get free money on the internet or something. Trust me, I read these applications, and it's clear that they don't exactly understand what YC is and what it's all about. They just want money, right? That is not you. You are here. You have been participating in this. There's lots of context that you have about YC, and so that out of the gate means you're going to be much better prepared to fill out this application, and that you're a great fit for the sort of company that we would want to fund. Okay. Another thing is, I think a lot about what you should be doing as a founder in terms of cost-benefit analysis on time. There's a lot of things that seem like a good use of time that are not a good use of time. And there's a lot of things that may not seem like a good use of time that are an excellent use of time. And so I'd argue filling out an application should really only take you, 2 or 3 hours. And the potential upside is quite huge versus other ways you can spend 2 or 3 hours where the upside is not much at all. So let's talk a little bit about how you create luck. And this is sort of like a meta point outside of the application thing, but great founders create luck. And there's ways that you can create luck in your life that increase the chances that you will get lucky. And the way you get lucky is you set yourself up to be lucky as often as possible. And so if you can set yourself up so that every single day of your life you have a shot at something really fortunate happening to you, the odds that something really fortunate will happen to you are like super high. And I would argue applying to YC is definitely one of those things, right? I answer questions, and invariably people will probably ask me questions at the end of this that are some kind of complicated way of being like, of you talking yourself out of why you should do it for some reason. That is not a great way to create luck. And the fact is, you're going to set yourself up to be rejected all the time as a founder, right? You get customers, your customers unsubscribe from your service, your customers are not happy, you're going to try to recruit people, that may not work. You're going to be told no all the time. And so if you set yourself up so that you never hear no and that you never get negative feedback, it's just like you're not going to set yourself up to actually be successful. So this is an example of like when I talk to people when I'm on the road, a lot of the questions or concerns that people have are all stem from this, which is they're afraid of what happens if they don't get in. And so they don't even bother to take the chance. And again, regardless of YC in this particular topic, I really think this is a good trait for you to develop as a founder. We work on this in the program with people of really encouraging people to not be so afraid of getting told no and systematically trying to set yourself up for good things to happen to you as much as possible, right? And so this is just another of those situations. So let's talk about some of the reasons that people don't apply. This one is very common. I am too early. There is no such thing as too early. We fund people. Sometimes in the extreme case, people have changed their idea between when they get invited to interviews and when they get to the interview. That's an extreme case. That's pretty early. We also fund people that end up pivoting mid-batch. And so that means they've been working on their startup like a negative number of days, right? That is clearly not too early also. And so again, there's a lot of ideas around there. that like the right way to apply to YC is to wait till you have a certain amount of stuff. Someone asked me a question, what's the right amount of MRR to get into YC? And like, holy cow, the answer is 0, right? That doesn't mean you will definitely get in every time, clearly, but any kind of roadblock you put for yourself that you're too early, I would argue is your own self-constrained roadblock, not something that's coming from us. Conversely, people think they are too far along. And this one is great because it's like, there's like this ideal point between too early and too late that is like lasts, a week or something. And otherwise you're too far in either extreme. Most likely you're not too far along. We have folks every batch that come in. We have folks that, had over $1 million in annual recurring revenue. Folks that have had 20 or 30 employees, folks that have raised a fair amount of money, like whatever metric by which you think you're too far. And again, maybe you are genuinely too far because you're like, got 1,000 employees or something. The odds are, though, most of the people that ask this question, it's because they are launched or they have a little bit of revenue and they're like, oh, wow, we don't need YC. We got it all figured out. And again, our data and the folks that we work with suggest that you are most likely not too far along, depending on your circumstance. So if that is the idea, don't put the barrier into yourself on why you're not going to apply just because you think you're too far along. I'm too experienced. This is where either you just, oh, yeah, I went to business school or I've done a startup before. Okay, that's fine. But all you're doing is limiting possibilities there. And there's lots of folks that are super experienced. Justin Kahn did YC 3 times and is now the founder of Atrium. And he gets something out of it every time. And clearly he's very experienced. And I would argue much more experienced than many people that think this about themselves. So again, this is just creating barriers for yourself. This is a common one. There's something specific about my company that YC just doesn't get. And usually the way that I answer this is by listing all the types of companies that we fund. It is too long and too boring to list here. So I will not attempt to be to list them all. But look, whatever industry you're in, whatever you're doing, most likely we fund something kind of like it or equally crazy to that. And we really like crazy and weird things. And again, what I mean by crazy and weird, I don't know. We funded nuclear fission and nuclear fusion startups and supersonic jet startups and like, I don't know, all sorts of crazy biotech stuff. So it's unlikely that we're just going to be like, wow, that's too weird for us. Maybe you are that one, but most likely this is a barrier you're putting in for yourself. This one's also really common. People think if you do YC, you have to live in the Bay Area forever. That is not true. A huge percentage of the people that we fund, you do the program here, but that's 3 months and you go and do whatever you want. Right? So if you're super worried about like, wow, I just love New York City. That's my home. I want to be in New York City. Okay, that doesn't preclude you from wanting to apply to YC. Okay, there's more. I'll go through these quicker. I'm a solo founder. Okay, that's not a reason not to apply. It's just, again, maybe you're afraid of rejection or that we encourage you to have co-founders. That doesn't mean, that's not a reason to not apply to YC. I've already applied to YC once before. I'll address this later, but just because you didn't get in once in no way means that you won't do it again. So that's like not a good reason. I've already raised some money. I don't know the stats off the top of my head, but a huge percentage of last batch had already raised a few, on the order of 6 figures. And there's definitely some 7 figures as well. And so in no way does it preclude you from applying to YC. It's in fact extremely common. Finally, there's competitors. Sometimes if you're doing like a self-driving car startup or a scooter startup or something, there's other folks that we funded in the space. We fund folks in the same space all the time. This does not preclude us from funding you, nor is a good reason to not apply. Okay. Here, there's not many, but I do think there's a couple of good reasons to not apply. One is you have the kind of business that is either not anticipated to be fast growing enough, nor in your ambition is something that ever makes sense to raise venture capital for. And if that does not make sense for you, then yeah, you probably shouldn't apply to YC. Like you should not raise any venture capital. You should make the growth rate work for you and make the business model that works for you. And that's A-okay, right? So no sweat, that's a good reason. The other thing is you're just not sure you want to work on this very long. All right, that's also a valid reason. We're used to working with people that are working on something for a very long time. And so if you just want to do something for a few months or put this on your resume, then yeah, that's a fair reason to not apply. How to apply? Okay, this is really straightforward. There's a website. You go to the website and you follow the instructions. It's okay to apply early or late, depending on your circumstances. As Jeff said, there are It's slightly harder to get in early or late, and that's just because that's not our primary time to be cycling through things. But if those are the circumstances you're in, you should definitely apply. This is a very common email question we get is, hey, it's 2 weeks after the deadline, can I still apply? Guess what the answer to that question is? It's a very quick yes. But people want to ask, they want permission. And again, this is a recurring theme about founders. You need to learn, you don't have to ask permission for everything. You don't need our approval to do everything. There's a website, if there's a button where you can apply, you should totally apply, right? You don't need to email us, have us say yes, and then do it. That is an unnecessary step, right? So just keep that in mind. And you can just email us. And again, most of these questions are just people asking, should I apply? And our answer is almost invariably yes. But if you want to ask us, you can. There's the email address. So let's talk about what makes a good application. The first one, I promise this is not redundant. This matters, and it's because I read so many applications, I have a very good idea of what they actually look like. And I realize that this talk will go on the internet, and many of the things that I say will be reflected back. Like I'm creating a feedback loop for the things that I read. And so things I'm putting in here are actually meant, like I want these ideas to get dispersed of people knowing what makes a good application, because I think that will make my job easier, right? So this is very intentional. The first thing is that you'd be shocked how many people don't actually fill out the dang thing properly. Like sloppy, right? There's like whole areas where they don't answer the question whatsoever. They don't put in URLs. They don't fill out their bio. I don't know. It's not a very long application. You'll see yourself, but it is shocking to me what a high percentage of the time people just like don't fill the dang thing out, or like put in lots of like errors, and it's just like not great. Think about it applying for a job or any other kind of professional thing. Lack of professionalism here, not equated with success. So just fill it out. It's that simple. And that's why I'm leading with this, is you'd be shocked how few people follow this direction. Maybe they think it's like a lottery ticket where if they put it in an application, even if it's a bad one, they might get in. No, humans read these things. I read these things, and I appreciate it if you fill out the application. The second thing is the founder video. You would be shocked how many people don't follow the dang directions. There's directions on how to do the founder video, i.e. it should be a minute long. All the founders should be in the video. And people don't do that. We get the 20-minute like spirit journey video where I don't even know what they're talking. It's just like or like sometimes I've seen like an hour 20. I've seen some weird stuff, but like the 20-minute spirit journey video, not super helpful. And it's really hard to sit there and watch something for 20 minutes. 1 minute is the perfect amount of time. We give you examples. Those examples are great videos. Be like that video. It's also really good to have the entire founding team in the video. People are always like, hey, I'm here and I'm in the airport and my co-founder is in here, so here's my video. And like, I think that's fine if that's what you have to do, but maybe just waiting a couple of days till you can be with your co-founder to do the video would be a good idea. Because my theory is a lot of times when people don't follow the directions, it may be because their co-founder doesn't know they're applying to YC. Like there's all these things under the hood where the lack of the co-founder in the video speaks volumes. And so maybe you have a great reason why your co-founder is in the video, but I would suggest it, right? And it's in the directions. So I'm not telling you anything that's not in the directions. I'm just letting you know, yes, we watch these things, and yes, it's valuable. And if you just follow the directions, then we're going to be super happy. And when it's like, either there's no video or the video is weird, another thing that people do a lot is they put in like an unrelated video of a product demo that they made with one of those free tools where there's no humans in it. And it's like, I can't even describe it. But anyway, there's a whole genre of things that people put in there that are not remotely following the directions. So please follow the directions. I swear it matters. Clarity of thought. This is a good application. It's easy to understand what they're talking about. And it doesn't mean you write tons and tons and tons of words. Tons of words definitely has a diminishing return where we don't know what you're talking about. And I just can't understand what the application is saying. Also clarity on who's building the product. It's remarkably obfuscated to even figure out what's going on and who's even building the thing. Like you'll see who the founders are and you'll kind of see what they're working on, but it's really hard to tell who's building it. And so just having it be very crisp of who's building it. Again, this would put you way better than average if you just do these things. It's so simple, right? So good applications do these. Let's talk about clarity because this is definitely something that is worth talking about. Great applications that I read, the application, when I read an application and I know when I read it, they're going to get in, they're super easy for me to read. It does not require a lot of work. It doesn't feel boring or painful. It just reads like with no effort whatsoever. And it's because I understand there's no jargon and everything just adds up and it's a great narrative. And it's like, wow, what a great application. And you move on. It's very quick. Weak applications obfuscate. They obfuscate everything. What is your idea? Obfuscated. Who's on the team? Who's writing the code? Obfuscated. How does it work? I have no idea. What is the state of the company? Are you launched? Do you have users? What is it? You have revenue, but you're not launched? What is that? Like basically, it's like a puzzle. When I'm reading one of these applications, it's like a brain teaser where I'm trying to figure out what's going on. And I promise this doesn't help. I think a lot of the times the people obfuscate is they either think that that's what we want to read, or we like buzzwords, or we like this stuff, or they're trying to hide something where it's not, where like the revenue is actually their personal salary, but it's not revenue for the company, but they're putting it in there because they think they should have revenue, like stuff like that. And so we'll ask questions sometimes to figure this out, but there's such a clear delineation for me as an application reader about someone that is clearly communicating in a very crisp way versus where it's this brain teaser and I'm trying to pull out, or it's just like tons of work for me to pull out the key facts from the application. Okay. And I think this is broadly applicable if you're trying to convince someone to buy your product, or you're trying to convince someone to work with you, or you're trying to convince an investor to invest in your startup, and they don't even understand what you're talking about, you have already lost, right? Simply going for coherent understanding should always be the first thing you do before you're trying to sell someone, right? So if I don't understand what the heck is going on in your application, it doesn't even get to the point where it's like, hey, should we fund this company or not? We just don't know what's going on. And you will notice that other people will check out. Like if you're trying to pitch your thing to someone and they can't follow you, there's no way you're getting them to yes. And so I just think this is such a broadly applicable skill, and something that we work on a lot in the batch is simply being clear and making sure the other party knows what you're doing first, and then selling them comes second once they actually understand what you're doing. So I put in a few examples here. So here's some examples of really great descriptions from real YC applications, from real YC companies that got in. And so here's a company called Remix. And this is the entirety of their answer to this question. There's not more. This is it. I don't know. I'm not going to read it out loud, but like it's what, 3 sentences? And I read that and I know exactly what they do and I know who wants it. And that's it. Great. Seems valuable, right? This requires so little mental effort to pull out what Remix is and what they're doing and who it's for that I'm like, great, like takes 2 seconds to read. Okay. Here's another one for a company called TetraScience. Also excellent. We're a software platform that connects scientific tools to the cloud. It allows scientists to access their lab devices from anywhere, blah, blah, blah. And we make a small hardware module which connects those labs to the web. That's it. That's great. That's what we want to read. See, super crisp, understandable, no jargon, answers all the key questions. Notice that they're not trying to sell us on any of this. They're just explaining what it is. And that's why this is so great, is it's super coherent, super clear. Here's another example from GitLab when they applied to YC. And they explain exactly what it is, the history of the company. And they also add in really impressive facts right at the top. Over 100,000 organizations use it, including thousands of programmers at Apple. All right, that's good. Glad they put that in there, right? And it's right at the top, super crisp, right? So this is, when we read these applications, it's very clear what they do, and we're like, wow, tell me more. Like, I understand what you're doing. Here's an example of a bad one, and I didn't pull this from a real application. I wrote this myself, and I wrote this based on many of the applications I read. You know what I'm saying? Like I didn't have to think too hard to write what a bad description is. And it keeps going. I couldn't fit it on the slide. It keeps going for pages. And this isn't even an exaggeration. This is what a lot of applications are like. And I understand, like I have empathy for the people that apply with stuff like this because I think that they think that this is what we want. Or they think that if they use enough jargon or buzzwords that we will get confused and fund them or something. You know, it's like stunning us, like, oh, I don't know, yeah, blockchain, okay, yes. Instead, this is arduous work that makes me like want to go take a break. I'm like, okay, well, I'm done. Like I read one of these and I need to go like get a breath of fresh air. This is really hard to read. It's really hard to understand what's going on. And I still don't know. I read this and I've learned nothing. I still don't know what this company does, even after reading the application. And so please don't apply with stuff like this. It's not helping. Makes sense? Yeah. And do you see the crisp difference between this and the good examples? Yeah, okay. Great applications tell a story. So here's the things that I would want to pull out of an application that I was reading. Who is on the team? So this is who we are. This is what we're working on. This is why we're working on it. This is, i.e., how we got the idea, something like that. This is what we've accomplished thus far. Even if that's, hey, we haven't done much, that's okay. I still want to figure that out. And this is why we're going to make this work. And that's pretty much it. These are the things that when I read an application that I'm trying to pull out of it, and there's nothing fancy here. And if you make me work really, really, really hard to figure this out, that's the sign of not a great application. But if this just flows out without taking any effort whatsoever, then that's a good application. Nothing fancy here, right? And if you've ever hired people and read resumes before, it's kind of the same deal, right? You just look at a resume and you're like, okay, cool. There's some key things you're looking for. And then you're like, sounds good. And you move on, right? A resume that takes tons and tons and tons of work to make sense of is probably not a great resume. Okay, here's my #1 tip to applicants on what would help. Make it clear that there's at least one person on the team who can make the thing that you are working on. And notice I'm being a little vague in that language because this is not just software. This means any kind of technology that you bring to bear, right? So if you are building a cure for cancer, you clearly are not going to have any programmers on that team, nor would you be expected to do so. But it would certainly be good if you're working on a cure to cancer to have some sort of scientist on the team. Does that make sense? Same thing, hardware, our nuclear companies, there were no programmers that were the founders of the nuclear companies, but you would hope to see a couple of folks with PhDs in something related to the nuclear field, right? So some sort of domain expertise. And the reason is we fund lots of startups, and if you have all these great ideas and no one on the team can actually do it, you're going to have a hard time. And so just having a really good sense, both in the application and in general, I would recommend having someone on the team that can do it is highly recommended and changeable. Sometimes there's folks where the team is not, say you are working on something in software and there aren't folks that have the credentials or background where there are known software experts. That's A-okay. We still fund folks like this, but the burden of proof is on them to prove they can do it. I can think of an example of a company where it was like a self-taught programmer that was so excited and wanted to do their idea so badly that they went and built the prototype themselves. And it was in the application like, here, I built this myself. Great, they got in, right? And it's because the burden of proof, not just like, let me take your word for it, but you were able to show, even though you don't have a background of an established software engineer, you built a prototype and you brought it to market and you proved it. And so that's a good way to think about if you're in this status of having a currently non-technical team, of just simply backing up the fact that you can bring the product to bear, whether that's from a team, whether that's you learning from yourself, whether it's a friend helping with a prototype, just some evidence that you can bring the product to market is highly recommended. And like last note here is obfuscating this doesn't help, right? So sometimes people make it very vague who built the product or where the prototype came from or who's going to build it. And like, I don't recommend obfuscating this. I think having to be super crisp on who is making the thing that you're working on is highly recommended. If you have an application that actually follows the directions really well and is well written and does the video stuff correctly, and you have one or more folks that can build the thing that you want to build, and there's some evidence that you're serious about it. And what I mean by that is like a lot of times people apply and it's clear they did it kind of on a whim and they're not actually serious about it whatsoever. It comes across. If there's just some evidence that you really want to do this, that's recommended. So if you meet those things, you get about a 4 times higher odds to get an interview, right? Like if you're doing this stuff, getting an interview is not that crazy hard. And if you fail all these criteria, then yeah, the odds are pretty slim. And so it's as simple as this, that this is, this is what it looks like to get an interview, is that you meet these criteria. And again, it's pretty straightforward and transparent. Okay. Let's talk about applying more than once. Okay, about a third of last batch were companies that applied already in the past and didn't get in. And so the reason I say this is it's not bad to apply and not get in. That doesn't ruin your odds. If anything, it helps you. The way it helps you is that your next application shows progress. If you apply and don't get in, and you apply again and you show progress, I look at that when I'm reading the applications, and I know we all do, and we're like, wow, way to go. They really went and did it. Like, I'm so psyched. Like, they went from an unlaunched idea, and then the next application, they launched it. Wow, great job. Like we're impressed. And this is another thing to think about is as application readers, we're like on your side. We're not looking at reasons to pick something apart. We're looking for evidence that like you're serious and that like things are going well and you're trying really hard. And so when you see someone expend real effort and make real progress, application, that's such a strong signal, right? And this is why you see such a huge percentage of the folks that do IC are folks that have applied in the past, right? Is because it is such a strong positive signal. One thing I wanted to mention is that it's basically impossible to network your way into YC. The whole reason YC was created was to make it easy for people that had no network to start a startup and get help and raise money. And so the idea of having this website where you can apply and then you do a 10-minute interview and you get funded was like really out there and weird. I remember when YC launched, I was not working here. So we don't expect anyone to have a network. We don't expect anyone to network with us. One note on this is I get the sense it's not a lot of people, but some people attempt to cold email us a lot or do other things that are sort of stalkerish a lot. And that does not help. We don't expect you to have done that. And the vast majority of people that get in are complete strangers we have never met before. That's the entire system here, is funding complete strangers. And my guess is your time is better spent actually making your startup better than trying to like do some weird stuff to like get attention. Like we always have these really crazy attention-seeking things that happen. And I can assure you, we don't enjoy those things. Again, what do I mean? Like people email, they physically mail us weird stuff sometimes. I'm like, that's not great, right? So sometimes, some people put a lot of effort into this, not a lot of people, but some people do. And I'm just letting you know that this is not a good use of time, nor expected in any way, and that's not how I see it set up. Another thing to think about is sometimes there are people that you know in the network, say alumni or other people, and they will give you well-intentioned bad advice. For instance, oh, don't apply until you have 5K MRR. Or, oh, I'm really tight with the YC partners, so let me put in a good word for you. Or, like, you should be very skeptical of this stuff. Self-appointed people that are giving you well-intentioned advice that's essentially putting up barriers between you and the process, I would just be like really wary of that. I'm sure it's coming from a good place, but again, a lot of times when I answer questions from people on applying, some of the weirder ideas come from people that are vaguely in the network. And so if someone's telling you you're too early or too far along or something, I would be fairly skeptical, right? And again, you don't need a network to get in, so expecting the network to give you all the perfect advice is not always great. Real quick point, this is not about YC, but the last topic made me think of it. watch out for predatory advisors. So in the entertainment industry, there's lots of people that want to be famous. There's lots of people that want to be recording artists, or they want to be actors or directors. There's a huge supply of them. And one of the things of starting out in the entertainment industry is you meet all of these people that claim to have great connections, and they're somehow going to extract value from these poor, naive people. And it's really sad. And this exists for sure in the tech industry, where there are people that will just ask for equity or cash compensation and claim all this stuff and promise you the world. And it's kind of a drag to see this exist. And so I just want to encourage everyone to be very wary of people like this and to do research. And that means Googling them. If they claim fantastic things, look into that. Due diligence on other people they worked with in the past. There's just like a whole variety of people that claim to help you break into Silicon Valley that I think is pretty dubious. And there are some legit things in there, but just like in the entertainment industry, for every, I don't know, 10 people that claim they can get you a meeting with the head of all the labels to get you a record deal, you know, nine of those are probably lying, you know? So keep in mind, the best way to have great things happen is to build a great startup, and then great folks will find you, and to be a little wary of some of the folks that are looking for people just like you that are trying to break in. All right. So let's talk about interviews. If you get invited to interviews, they last 10 minutes. The interviews are in person. We expect the full founding team to be there. There's usually 3 to 4 people from YC in the interview. And the questions are usually very basic. And what we're trying to do is just understand the nuts and bolts of the business. It's nothing fancy. Just like I was saying about the application process, people are surprised to learn that there's nothing too fancy here. There's no trick questions. There's no really expert stuff. We're just trying to understand really basic things like, oh, are you launched? Well, how are you getting users? Okay, what is the next step for the company? How do you see this getting big? These are all very, very basic questions, and we're simply trying to understand the stuff, right? Versus, yeah, actually, let me go to the next one. So there's a lot on the internet about how to prepare for interviews, and I think a lot of it is a little wrong. And the reason it's wrong is I think it sets up the mentality that a YC interview is this adversarial thing that it's your job to beat, right? It's like the interviewers are your opponents, and your job is to go in there and like stun them and confuse them. And then if you fool us good enough, then we will fund you. And I think that that is wrong. And I read this whole genre of blog posts because they're entertaining to me. And I think it's usually people that didn't get in that write that. And so I understand how it can feel adversarial if you didn't get in. And it's also more exciting to write a blog post about this really exciting interview. And it was like, they were grilling me so hard and I like had to think on the fly. Like that's more exciting than, yeah, we had a kind of a boring conversation about my business, right? And so I want you, this is a good thing for any kind of working with investors. I want you to put yourself in the shoes of the person on the other side of the table, which is, what are we trying to get out of the interview? Imagine you were interviewing a company. What would you be looking for? You'd be looking for basic answers to your question, and you'd be looking for having a pleasant conversation, that this is someone that you want to work with and that you're excited to embark on their journey with them, right? And so a lot of what I'm looking for in an interview is like, can I have a productive conversation with this person? And if someone goes in there and like spits out this like memorized paragraph of text about AI something, that's like weird. Like that's not like an organic conversation of someone you might want to work with. That's someone going in there that clearly read way too many blog posts and spent way too much time preparing and is like kind of not understanding the context of the conversation, which is, hey, like let's have a conversation about your company. Instead, they're just like spouting nonsense at us, okay? And I feel like that's a consequence of people reading too many blog posts about this adversarial process. Because the fact is, when we fund a company, we are now working really closely with that company forever. The founders in your group, they get your cell phone number. They call you all the time. They text you all the time. Like these become people that are a really important member of your life. And the people that I fund, like this lasts a long time. And so I just want you to know from our perspective, we're just trying to get a feel of like, okay, like, are we ready to really work with this company, get super involved? And so, have that compassion for the people on the other side of the table, versus making it really like a strange situation where it feels unnecessarily, memorized and painful for us on the other side of the table. And again, like, I think sometimes people try to manipulate the process, and if we get any hint that you're trying to do something weird, again, that doesn't engender trust. I think that's the word. We're looking for trustworthiness in a sense that we're getting to know the real you in those things. So let's talk about a successful interview. Interviews do go really fast and they're intense. And the reason they're fast and intense is we're trying to pull all the information out of you quickly, and there's not a ton of time. And so it's not an attempt to trip you up. It's simply that's how much time we have, and we're trying to learn as much as we can. Successful interviews, the founders demonstrate a mastery of their own business. They can talk about what they're working on. They know their own numbers. They know how many users they have. They know what their plans are. They know what their equity split is. Like, all the things that are in the application, they are like, yeah, I can talk about that. Like, oh, I have a question. When you said this is about that in your application, what did you mean? Oh yeah, I have an answer to that, right? Like, we're just looking for you to clarify things that we may not have understood from the application. And so there's no such thing as a correct answer, right? This is not a quiz show. This is not a beat the interviewers at their own game. This is a legit, we're just trying to understand what you're doing. Another thing is, we know how risky this is, and we know how slim the odds are in an interview are to succeed. And so if you come in there being like, everything's great, everything's perfect, I have it all figured out, I'm confident, like, we're definitely going to be successful, I promise, like, okay, that's not actually good. Like, it denotes a lack of self-awareness. And so again, if you over practice for these things and you think your job is to come in there and tell us how you have everything figured out and you're a genius and your whole team is geniuses, and like, it's like you cannot lose, not a great sign in an interview, right? So a good idea of what is hard about the business and what the challenges are is expected and recommended versus the things where you do have, where you do know what you're doing. Does that make sense? So yeah, like, overconfidence, not necessarily a great. You don't see this in successful interviews. You see self-aware founders. If you are interviewed and not selected, we send an email with some feedback. Usually the feedback is focused on a single.
Hello, everyone. I wanted to kind of mention a couple of things before we close out here in a couple of minutes. Lloyd Jr., if you got any reminders, you can come on and give them. But I think the main thing that I wanted to make sure our audience was aware of is that there are a lot of money right now that's thrown after Black and brown founders. And a key thing is actually being able to apply and articulate what your startup idea is and what you're trying to build. So just be aware of that opportunity. And so our approach is to get you ready for that kind of stuff. And but in order to do that, we're going to try to find every resource we can to help you do that. And so even though, like, with Jonathan and the G Beta program, one of the things they do in there, even though they don't give you any funding, they give you a lot of perks, so like $1 million worth of perks for free software. So what we're going to do with our portfolio companies that participate in the pitch competition and were finalists, but also a few others, we're going to have them come into the Spark XYZ thing and fill out their profile and take advantage of the freebies there. And then, we're going to help them if they need some website building or application building. We're going to do our best to help them with that. But the other thing is, we're going to have the founders also build a profile on f6s.com. So that's one of the ones that's been around for probably more than 5 years. and they have millions of dollars of worth of freebies. And kind of to give you an example, let's say you need to host your website, web application, or whatever. So like on Spark XYZ, the AWS Amazon benefit is $5,000. So you can actually definitely host your website and do a lot of things with that. But on the F6S, if you can get your profile up on there looking pretty good, the benefit is $30,000 from AWS. And so really, we're going to work with our companies to get their situation, put this startup in the best light. And so, is there any comments you have, Lloyd Jr.?
No, there's no questions that I see in the comments on Facebook or here on Hopin, but I want to say thank you all for joining us today. Those who are participating in cohorts and who are have access to the portfolio, we encourage you to jump and get started. This should be a motivation for all of you to jump right on in, get started with your ideas today. And even if you're not in the cohort, that doesn't mean you can't ask questions. That doesn't mean you can't reach out. There are resources here. So definitely take advantage of that. And we'll see you next Thursday.
Yes, that's right. And we definitely want to apologize for the networking session today. That was pretty horrible, that not being able to network. But we won't give up. We'll keep trying. So hopefully next week everything will be working fine. Thank you all. See you all next week. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.